folks, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to start the meeting right on time. I'm calling the meeting to order of the Monteagle Regional Planning Commission. I'm going to do a roll call for attendance. Richard Black.
Here.
Janet Miller-Schmidt. Here. Mary Jane Flowers. Not here. Doreen Parmley. Here. Peter Beasley.
Here.
Marilyn Rodman. Not here. And Ivan Michelle Russell. Here. We're looking at approval of previous meeting minutes. I'm sure you had this before. Any corrections, any additions? And if not, I need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
A second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Gotcha. All right, we'll move on to the next. Staff and community reports. Staff approved plat report. It looks like we have none. Is that correct, Garrett?
Correct.
The one and only Earl Gary is next. Make sure that microphone works.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. No, that one right up there. Yeah, you
gonna
got
let me get up there?
Absolutely. It's that pretty blue shirt.
I don't have anything really important. I know it's gonna be a long meeting tonight. We got a lot of important things to do. I do want to reemphasize and go on the minutes that I think we need to revisit the R3 zone. I actually pulled the old R3 that was from the prior zoning regs before they were changed, and the first sentence in it says that anything in R1 permitted in R1 or R2 that doesn't call for the committee to review it can be done in R3. So, that sentence was submitted in the last ordinance. I am seeing a great deal of people that are ready to buy property and ready to build little homes. And by looking at the zoning map, Monteagle is R3. So I just want to go on record again and ask that y'all revisit that, rethink it's important to do. And outside of that, if you have any questions, I would be glad to try to answer those on anything.
And that would involve an ordinance change again.
We will, and we'll just, the three of us will just work on it and get her done.
And
I'm sorry, we talked about the landscaping at the body shop. Did we get that? I think you issued a 30-day.
Lakeside collision.
I'm sorry, what?
Lakeside collision.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes, there he is.
hey, Chris,
Hey, how are you guys?
when you gonna put those big planters up?
On the road, so y'all can see. I'm here.
Here's the issue. Let me bring all this up again. The building permit was issued with a site plan that had been approved by the prior zoning, the prior board. And there was some landscaping shown and fencing gonna be shown on that prior approved drawing. But when I did the final down there on the construction, he had that building ready and he needed to use it. So, but I seen the landscaping was not complete, so I just gave him a temporary certificate of occupancy based on giving 30 more days to either get with you guys, make corrections need to be made, or do whatever the site plan called for. So that's where we are today, and I've talked to him about it. I think he may have an offer plan.
Trish, you wanna come up and tell us about it?
Sure.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, everybody.
I don't need one.
You don't need one? Okay. Like we got one, and I'll keep one, I guess.
We can share.
All right, so the original site plan, right there where you see those little red boxes by the side of the road, that's where we're gonna do our landscaping. But in real close proximity, there's some utility lines, some water lines and stuff, and the landscaping that we have proposed and got approved, will eventually come into interference with those. So, I talked to the, street department, the water department guys, and, we figured if we do like something above ground, that would probably be the best route to go. So on this plan, we got proposed, 6 wooden planters, 12 containing 12 3-gallon knockout rose bushes. So that whole side is pretty well gonna be landscape, but it's gonna be above ground on planters. That way if they ever gotta work on the water lines or if it ever needs to be moved, they can be removed and then put back. So that seems to be like the easiest way to go about it. So that's what I have for you guys to review.
Well, let me add one more thing to that. Another issue we have down there is, Christian has put up a fence that is not approved to be a screening fence for that particular blah, blah, blah. So we have that issue to deal with also. But the ordinance plainly says that the kind of fence he's putting up is not permitted.
Is it a chain
For a
link?
screening fence.
Is it the chain link? Is that what
Chain
it
link fence.
That had and the reason that we bought the materials and everything is ready and we started putting it up, that was previously approved. So.
Oh, the chain link fence was approved?
Yeah, the one, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So that was approved on the prior, so this time we didn't make any changes, because like I said, I already purchased all the materials and everything. I mean, they were, he actually pulled up like, right before they was pretty well done with it. So that's the reason I didn't make any changes to the fence on this particular site plan. Let's say it was approved by the prior committee, and so I bought all the materials. And prior to COVID, we could have probably just ordered them as we needed them. After COVID, everything has to be special order and paid for up front. So we got all the materials to finish the fence. So I didn't make any changes to the fence.
What was the previously approved? You remember when it was?
It was last July.
So we can look back at the records.
The city would have a recording of it, which I got one too. I didn't bring it with me, but the only thing that was changed from this one is just the landscaping.
Was it verbally approved, the fence materials, or was it shown on the site plan?
It was shown on the site plan.
So they made an exception?
Well, at the time, I'm not sure what happened. At the time, we had, it's on the site plan right here still. We didn't change anything. It says proposed green-coated privacy fence, 6 foot tall. And like I said, that's what they're erecting right now.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't have them erect anymore till we get it straightened out.
Well, we stopped.
You may be taking it down.
After me and Gary talked, we stopped, but like I said, at this time, I don't have any changes. Like I said, I got $10,000 worth of fence laying down, I have my shop on me, I can't send it back either. If I had known it was not approved or not allowed in the town, we would have, proposed a different kind. And, we would have, I wouldn't have wasted my money on that, so.
I will say, I haven't seen a version of the site plan. It's not an item on the agenda. I think Sam would agree that I recommend taking any action on this. It's a good point to bring up, but we can definitely have it on the next planning commission agenda to review after I've had a chance to look at it.
Oh, the dates. Okay, so 6/30/2020 supposedly would have been the time that was addressed last time, so we'll need to check the record on that. That's not typically something we can grant a variance on.
Well, I'm not arguing with Christian or anything.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just stating what we can remember about what happened way back when.
Yeah.
But this is a particular ordinance that was in place at that time, which was readopted, the same
Right.
ordinance was readopted. And under number 3, screening fences, the last sentence says, chain link fencing is prohibited as a screening fence.
Yeah.
Sure. I'd recommend submitting a revised site plan,
With what?
showing the alternate landscaping plan. It says section 710 of zoning ordinance does permit an alternate landscaping plan, which sounds like this would be.
I believe that's what this is an alternate. Yeah, so have it for next month? Okay. Because it looks good,
Yeah, I think it would work for everybody. It's easy to maintain, it's easy to, one of them dies, or it gets run over, or whatever, we can buy it, replace it really quick. So it's something that would be pretty beneficial to everybody, I believe. Now, as far as the fans, what do you guys recommend we do on the fence?
Well, if you go strictly by the zoning ordinance, there's only 3 materials can be used, and that's wood, brick, or block.
I think we need to investigate that part of it, Christian, because I totally understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from. That's a lot of material
Yeah.
and a lot of
Well,
cost.
the vinyl, just a regular vinyl fence would have worked, but like I said, if it would've got caught on earlier, like say we done purchased this material and it's been ordered, we've had it for a couple of months now. And, I'm not sure, what we need to do on that.
I would say put a hold on it until we can do some investigation for you.
Okay.
No one, and we don't want to put you out unnecessarily, but there's also, rules and regulations. So let's investigate that. We can't act on the planners either, is what we're saying. We can't act on that as approval. So just another month.
Could you give him another 30 days?
Is that,
Yes.
can you give another 30 days?
Yeah.
Does that work for you,
We need to
Christian?
make sure it gets on the agenda for next month.
For next time? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Me personally, I think that works, especially with the utilities underneath there.
Yeah, I think it will work good for everybody.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do from here, just,
Did Mr. Childers draw that as well?
yeah.
Okay, just have him send it to me.
Send it up there.
We appreciate you, Christian. Thank you.
Do y'all wanna keep them, or?
I'm going to give this back to you.
Okay.
There you go. And thank you
I'll
so
bring
much.
them back.
Any other questions for Christian before we head on to the next item?
Yeah, you can.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Christian.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else, Earl, that you need?
Done.
That's it, all right, great. I believe there was something with Jason Tate's. Is that going to come before the Jason Tate's new building?
That's future.
Future?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, any properly presented old business? Dean?
I had submitted an application for zoning change, and when I brought it up here, turned it in, asked them if they would contact me when it would be on the agenda, because sometimes there was a 2-week period, had to be in or whatever, but anyway, I was told, yes, that someone will call you, and no one called me, and then I saw in the messenger where it had come up at the June planning commission meeting. So I don't know if someone tried to call me, or if nobody has to call you, if I've got to call you, or anyway. I called today to ask when the next planning commission meeting was, and they said it's tonight at 6 o'clock. So that's what I'm here to talk about, if that's proper old business.
Garrett, is that proper old business?
Sam?
Well, I mean, are we prepared to address it tonight?
No, we're not
On the
prepared
merits?
to address it tonight because.
No, I just want to see what the process is.
Well, can we make sure it's on the agenda for the meeting in August?
Sure.
Yeah, why don't we do that, and that way you'll know what date it is.
So what's the difference, and if I'd have been here in June, you'd have talked about it, what's
What's
the
been on
difference?
the agenda?
It would have been on the agenda, and our planner would have had a
But
chance
it was on
to.
the agenda, y'all voted it down.
Correct.
Only because you weren't here.
Right, because you didn't call, only because you didn't call me.
No. I mean, we're not prepared to address it.
I'm not
tonight.
asking anybody to vote on anything,
Yeah.
I'm asking for, so when you do meet, I won't have to come up and tell you, and then you put it off another 30 days
No,
or 60
no.
days, like everything is done here.
This is why I'm telling you, we'll put it on the agenda for August, the August meeting, first Tuesday in August, 6
And then what
o'clock.
are you gonna do?
Well, then they'll consider whether or not it's a valid rezoning request or not. That's what they do.
Well, it was already stated that it was not, it shouldn't be.
You stated that based on the fact that you weren't here.
No, that's not what it says.
That's what was voted on.
Did you have a recommendation on it last time, Garrett? Do you remember?
I'm sure I did.
But you can't remember what it is sitting
Well,
here.
the newspaper said the commission denied the request by Dean Lay to rezone the property from C2 commercial to R3 residential to allow for construction of apartments or condominiums, since Lay was not present to answer questions. Commissioner Richard Black noted allowing residential construction in the center of a commercial corridor could lead to future problems similar to the current objections to the proposed truck stop. So it was discussed. current zoning ordinance, as far as related to that, the only place apartments are allowed is in the apartments and condominiums, R3, R4, and industrial are the only three sections noted there. Past history, Monteagle Green Apartments on Highway 56 at the Tracy City city limits up there, it was changed from a C2 to whatever it is, R3 or whatever it is, to allow for apartments. Which is, and you go to every town around here, and there's apartments and housing in commercial zones. And you can even do it in Monteagle if you want to do. You can put it in an R1 under mixed use, but there's a couple of catches to that. But mixed-use residential developments are intended to locate high-density housing and developments in commercial zones with the goals of increasing pedestrian connectivity, making urban facilities and amenities accessible to residents, and establishing an integrated residential component that contributes to commercial activity and economic development throughout the Monteagle corridor. And it goes on and lists other things. But the problem you get into, if you don't put it on a main street, the apartments over going to my house, I don't know what the name of it is now, but anyway, it's over on North Bluff and Lee, I guess. There's only 24 units of those, and it's very unsafe traffic. Your garbage dumpster's right out there in the front. It's a health hazard. It's horrible, whereas Monteagle Green has plenty of traffic, highway, there's no issues. Rogers Group developed Cliff Tops and spent millions of dollars doing that. And this property was part of the Rogers Group property, and there's restrictive covenants in that property, and they actually amended their restrictive covenants, the only time it's been amended, and it was amended to allow for apartments and condominiums in it. And so there is precedence that this has been done. Used to in the planning, in our zoning ordinance and stuff, it used to say uses permitted in a zone, uses prohibited, uses permitted on review. And sometimes it covered that, and sometimes it didn't. But it's if you've already made up your mind, then there's no need to wait until next month to deal with it. And
I don't think anyone's made up their mind, Dean.
Okay. I really, if I remember correctly, Dean, it was just the deal that you weren't here. And good, bad, or ugly, I think that's a lot of
okay. Well, I apologize for not being here. Had I known it was going to be on the agenda, I would have been here.
And I will check into processes because, we're still new at this.
You're not new at this. Don't use that excuse.
I'm going to.
Well, it's not valid.
Oh, well, okay.
If you didn't know, you should have known.
To call you?
No, to call everybody if they've got business. Just because you bring something in to be submitted for the planning commission doesn't mean it's coming up on the next. Most times, depending on what it is, it's got to go to him.
I don't know the processes. I will find out.
Well, you should know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to new business, zoning ordinance amendment, and that's a section 1105 non-conforming use. I think that's you, Garrett.
Yes, ma'am. So this came up at the last planning commission meeting. I recommended that we actually amend the section 1105 non-conforming uses and structures section. And with the ordinance that's drafted in front of you, again, it's just a draft. It was discussed to bring this before the planning commission so that we can work out. Essentially, I'm just here to present this material. I don't expect any action. I don't really recommend any action on it at this time because there's not really been any review or any back and forth between us. But just to present this material, this is amending the non-conforming uses and structures section, item number 6 under section 1105. The section reads, non-conforming buildings containing non-conforming uses shall not be structurally altered except in conformance with provisions of this ordinance. This provision shall not be construed to prevent normal maintenance, repairs, or alterations required for structural safety. That's the exact language as it reads today. What I'm proposing as new language to this is adding subsection A, existing non-conforming single-family dwellings which are located within the C1 corridor commercial district and the C2 highway commercial district may be reconstructed and used as before. Subsection I. This subsection is solely intended for properties that are in full compliance with the municipal and building codes. Any property which has had a notice of violation within the last 24 months shall not apply. I would think that 24 months is somewhat arbitrary in this stance. It could be 72, whatever you guys deem fit. Next subsection, quote, reconstructed and used as before, end quote, shall constitute complete reconstruction as well as an addition or expansion to the primary structure. Subsection 3, accessory structures and uses may be permitted under this section, provided the structure and use is incidental and subordinate to the residential non-conforming use.
So was this an address to the Maxwell situation that we found ourselves next to a C2 district? Wasn't that what our confusion was?
Right, it was not recommended to rezone that portion of property to R3 at that time. This wouldn't directly address that gentleman's property. It's a very common thing in other communities.
Any questions on that? And how would that help us?
So essentially, there's a lot of commercial zones that have single-family residential structures. Like in Mr. Maxwell's case, if he's just wanting to add on to the structure, add on a gazebo in the rear, add on a porch or anything to his primary house, add on what I'm looking for, a sunroom to the back of his house. He couldn't do it at this time. I think that was his case, is that you couldn't add on to his principal structure. It's a non-conforming use at this time. And I think this would help out those types of developments in town.
So someone who has a commercial property but is living there, is that what I'm?
Right, yeah, a resident who has a single-family residential home in a currently commercial zone.
And a lot of that comes from when the zoning took place originally.
Okay.
And you took big swaths of land and you say this needs to be more commercial, and then you go ahead and rezone that commercial, but there is some residential there, and that's what makes it a non-conforming use. When it was rezoned commercial, the residential is non-conforming use. So I think that's where it already comes, where it came from, most of the time.
Didn't we change way back when, it changed it to where people who, back in the day, people who had businesses lived in their business, right? And didn't we change it to address that fact that
It is.
That's okay?
It is if it's properly fire protected from the business from the residential part, yes.
Okay, so that's still with
Yes,
us.
but now.
That's different.
But if it's in a commercial zone and you wanna live in it, it's gotta look like a commercial building,
Right.
if that's correct. So it's gotta be built and designed to look like a commercial building. It's probably most likely the business is in the front and the residence is in the back, and then it's gotta be fire protected. It still has to be, because they're different fires.
Gotcha. Any questions on this? Because, we're having to go through a lot of things. Mary Jane, any questions? Welcome, by the way.
Yeah, sorry for my tardiness.
Come on over and join the crowd.
The only question, that's Mr. Maxwell that came that was next to the.
It's not specifically Mr. Maxwell, it's a overall.
Right, but that kind of made us think about
Yeah,
it, right?
right.
And that's the property over next to,
The museum.
museum. And he currently has, what you're saying, it's not a commercial, it's zone commercial, but his is a residential property. And so this is to protect them that are already a residential, but if he sells it, at that point in time, it's no longer residential. Is that correct?
Well, it's already been sold once, it's still
Right.
commercial.
Still commercial.
Sam, correct me if I'm wrong,
As
but
long as he-
non-conforming use transfers with the property owner, correct?
It does, unless it's fallen out of use. I think it's in our ordinance for 6 months or
Okay.
something like that, yeah.
So somebody could buy it and live in
And
it.
live in
Yeah.
it, and that would be okay.
It's not the ownership, it's the use.
It's the use. So they change the use.
And once it changes back to commercial, it
It's
can
no
go back to
longer.
residential.
I
Yeah.
got you. Okay.
Because it'd be contrary to the zoning.
To the zoning, okay.
You're not asking us to vote on this tonight, you're just introducing it, right?
Correct.
Right. give it-
We're just having a discussion on it.
Yeah, feel free to give me a call recommend different language, like I said, the month and 24-month period, that could be 36 months, 72.
Sure.
However you see fit. Sure.
Sam, since you're here, any viewpoints on that?
I don't, I defer to Garrett on that, that's more his bailiwick than mine, but I mean, you know, it's good to have flexibility for non-conforming uses, but, you know, sooner or later, they're going to quit conforming to the non-conforming and.
I mean, I can definitely bring a large format zoning map next time, put it up on the wall, we can see
Sure.
exactly where this would apply.
Sure, because we have several issues.
And you could also look at the R3 properties, I think that's a big issue as well.
That's also a big issue.
State law favors continuing a non-conforming use. There's a particular statute that allows that in the context of businesses.
Okay.
And so, it makes sense to do it in limited circumstances here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's do that next month. Any other questions for Garrett before we,
And
on
my
that?
biggest question is where in our growth plan does that actually apply?
Sure. I mean, I can definitely bring it back, we can look at it in detail.
Because I think that's kind of, we've heard that already tonight, a little bit about, how the zoning maps have been moved and changed.
They have. All right, any other questions for Garrett? Okay, we're gonna move on to Southern Tire Mart at Pilot Flying J site plan. Kinley Horn, someone here from, there we go. Hey,
Hi, how are you?
doing great.
Hi, my name is Kelly Frank. I'm here with Kinley Horn on behalf of the Southern Tire Mart at Pilot Flying J. This is at 640 Dixie Lee, just down the road. What we are proposing is an 8,500 square foot accessory building on the site that will serve as commercial tire sales for the tractor trailers that use the site. It will be only tractor trailer tire sales. You can see it'll be built on a portion of the existing parking lot towards the back of the building. And it will include, like I said, just a small metal building, a wraparound driveway so the tractor trailers can come back and get the tires and then come back out. And then it'll have a few utility connections that'll be made, some employee parking to support that structure, and then some landscape screening along the back of the property, right along Trussell Road. So that's really the extent. It's pretty straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
The curb cut that's in the back, is that a legal curb cut that's there, or is that a construction curb cut that's in the back on
Off Trussell. I believe it's used for maintenance. Yeah.
But it's there, but it's dirt, and I didn't know if that was a construction entrance.
Our understanding was that gets used for maintenance to mow the grass that's in the back behind the parking lot. So we're proposing to leave a gap in the landscape screening to maintain just that opening so that people can get back there.
Is it your intention to use that open that up as an entrance from the?
No, sir. The main entrance would still be off of Dixie Lee. We just have it's a turnaround in that space, but we won't make a connection to Trussell. No.
This curve that's showing on here, the hard curve?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I believe it's actually curb and gutter along the inside, and the outside.
Okay, so then it wouldn't have a cut in that curve for that access?
No.
Your drawings looked like that you were in the drawing that looked like that was going to be an access and egress point. But you're saying it's not.
Maybe if you tell me which sheet you're looking at.
Well, every one of them that has Trussell Road on it shows it.
Oh, so that's the demolition plan. So that one,
That's where it's coming out.
we're gonna remove that piece that's gonna overlap with our proposed driveway. So if you turn to the next sheet, you'll see it's a
So the
closed.
place that you have in the back that you would build would be a continuous, that would not be opened up at all, that curb cut that's back there on Trussell?
No. Really the only intention was to leave just a gap in landscaping for maintenance to get back there, not access.
Yeah, I'm seeing hard
I
curve.
would probably need to see that on some drawings
Okay.
before I would even get close to voting for this. What page?
This on page C201?
Yeah.
Somebody got to give me there, I can't see that small.
Yeah, the bigger one.
There's some larger ones in the back.
Here, right here. Yeah, I got it.
So, but we are adding additional concrete, and so we're taking out some spaces as well.
That is
Just
correct.
fill in. Does that still meet the standard of what
It
he
does.
requires, or?
So per the ordinance for your requirements, we've included some parking calculations. I believe that's on C2-00, where we've really counted up the existing spaces on the site, taken out the ones that are being removed, and shown the surplus that we have. So there is still a surplus of parking on the site, even with the spaces that are being removed.
And then are you adding, because of the additional, so this is gonna be adding, hard surface or concrete or whatever, road surface, have you added any landscaping?
Yes, so if you flip to L1-00, it's towards the back, you'll see we're seeding and sodding the disturbed area. We're adding a landscape buffer. We're adding some trees to meet the requirement of having all parking within 60 feet of a tree for this proposed area. And because we're taking up some of the existing parking lot as well, the net impervious increase is fairly small, and so we have that landscaping to accommodate that.
Where's the traffic?
And we're maintaining the existing drainage pattern through that field.
Is there access?
We're not changing any of that drainage. It's all just
It's all gonna still continue through.
correct.
This way?
So once again, just for clarification, the trucks will not be going on to Trestle Road.
No, ma'am, no. Yeah.
Right, that's the one I was going to question.
Any questions? 'Cause I think Garrett has his review on it. Any questions?
No, I think it's just. Okay.
No good? We may have more questions.
Okay.
All right,
I'll
thank
stand
you
by.
so much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Garrett?
Sure. I will say, this has been submitted, I have taken time to review it, and this is actually what you're seeing is the most recent set of plans. It's revised. I had some questions about the calculations of landscaping, which they included in the set that meet the requirements, and it looks like all the comments have been addressed, and I can't find any reason to deny this site plan.
So all the landscaping and the screening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I believe it was,
It was a 20% issue, I think, was the previous
Right,
one.
that was just a comment, it wasn't shown, so I was asked for it to be declared, broken down,
Okay.
the actual formula.
How wide is that access road for the site maintenance? The one Richard was asking about.
Let me see.
You can see it good on L1-100 or L1-00.
Yeah, this should be, well, the half size is not quite to scale, but maybe 20 feet. And again, that's not paved, I don't believe. It's really just a. And our site, it'll be raised slightly. You can see some of the contours coming down, and that will be a closed curb. So with the landscaping and it being dirt and really the main entrance, again, this will only be used by tractor trailers, so they know where to go. They're coming in that main entrance off the main road. I don't foresee there being any confusion on that point.
So there's no way they can get back there to that access road.
No.
I don't know, does it concern us, is the use of being tires, like how does that affect our, like, disposal? How does that work?
What do you do with the tires?
So the tires, they get changed inside the building, and so there's some storage for tires in the building, and then you'll see the dumpster enclosure, at the back of the building. You can see it best probably on C200. there is space in that dumpster enclosure for used tires as well.
Oh,
State takes care
State takes them.
State.
Oh, yeah. I would assume so.
All right, team, any other questions on this proposed site plan? Garrett has no objections on his review.
Does it have all signatures and everything that we need, or is that what we have to, okay.
Is the access and egress in a circle, or are they coming in and going out the same way? I don't
It's
see.
a one-way circulation, so.
So, coming in here and leaving here? At the top, I'm looking at C201.
Yes, so the access would be at the top and you would come straight in and come around.
So it's one way in, one way out.
Yes.
That's not going here. Everything's going in.
Everything's going there.
Everything's going there.
Okay.
So, just for clarity, I hate to keep harping on Trussell Road, but just for clarity, that fence and everything could be closed. You would accept it if it was closed and give up that curb cut?
I don't see a problem with that. I think, like I said, the only reason that it was left was because of maintenance access. So I would want to make sure that there was a way for, the lawnmowers that come back and take care of that space would have a way to access it
How do they access it now?
through that road off Trussell. So that, again, that's the primary reason for leaving that open. We could certainly explore and see if there could be a different way, for that grass area to be accessed for that maintenance, so that we could close that, so you could definitely, there would be trees and landscaping in that space to really make sure that it was understood that it's not an access. But again, I don't see anyone, looking at that and saying, oh, this is how I'm gonna get up there. It's gonna be higher, it'll be raised curb, it'll be, tractor trailers will not be going to Trussell to get in.
You'd be surprised.
And I don't know if this is a legal curb cut or if it was a temporary construction. I don't know when this thing,
That was when the pilot was originally done. And of course, before that, you had the other truck stop that was there. I say that interest has been there since day one, even with the old, truck stop that was there.
which would mean it could still be used.
Well, that's true. I mean, in my personal opinion would be, if there's any question about any of that, number one, close it off. Let a lot more people come in the front like everybody else does. That's gonna be an issue, I would think. I don't see why it has to be back there anyway.
I think we'd feel more comfortable if that was closed off. I think that's a very valid point.
So would you expect, and forgive me, I'm not familiar if Trussell is curb and gutter or just open section pavement, but would you want a physical barrier, or would landscaping through there be sufficient?
Or
It's dirt road anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's dirt out there.
it's a curb cut leaving and then it turns into dirt road.
Yeah, I just put the landscape for there.
Landscaping?
If that's what y'all think to happen.
That's the requirement that we have on the rest of the property there, if they just continued it all the way across.
Continue to escape. Would that be your suggestion, commissioners?
I think so. I think it needs to be done. I went by it this morning to see.
And you feel that it needs the landscaping? Would that be a problem?
I don't believe so. I think that's something we can accommodate.
I think just put that in your motion if you want to approve it. Ending, that's good. We don't have to back, we're moving that.
No, because that motion's not been made yet.
Hasn't yet. All right, any other questions, Richard? Is that acceptable?
me.
That would satisfy you? Any other questions?
I have one more point.
All right.
Might be considered
Okay.
fire apparatus.
Would it set you back to defer this a month so we could check into that? You can check in to see if it's all right with your client?
I know my client would prefer to have an approval with conditions, to be able to explore that. That would be our preference.
I mean, with it being tires, right now, as far as fire on this property, tires do add some fire risk.
Who would you check with on that? Or
I think the fire chief of Monteagle, he's the authority having jurisdiction right now.
So maybe you could approve it with the condition that the area in question be landscaped, subject to the fire marshal or fire chief.
Fire marshal, on that being a fire.
Yeah, the fire marshal, determining that is not an access point. Something of that
And
nature.
actually, I could call Desiree tomorrow and see what her hours are. She's our fire marshal in this area.
Because
Well,
that
the fire department has complete access around this entire building. If you got tires stored in a dumpster, they can get to it.
Well, maybe that's not a good point then. I'm easy.
Peter, what say you?
I said, I don't need it. Then close it off.
So approve it subject to the condition that the landscaping be across that entrance area. Is that what you want?
Yes, sir.
So that would be a proper motion if that's what y'all want to do.
Commissioners? All right, someone make a motion.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve it with, the condition that you go back and have it landscaped instead of the, road, access road.
Is that correct? Okay, I need a,
If that's your motion, then it's,
My motion.
as long as we understand, you understand what we're talking about.
all right, I need a second.
Second.
All right, Peter, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Should I do roll call? Always.
And you better go ahead and have roll call since everybody's reluctant to speak up.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's do roll call. Richard Black,
Yes.
Janet Miller Schmidt,
Yes.
Mary Jane Flowers,
Yes.
Doreen Parmley,
Yes.
Peter Beasley,
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. That's for rezoning.
It's a site plan.
All right, I'm gonna hand this over to Sam.
Okay. Madam Chairman and members of the council, each side have got attorneys here tonight, and I have talked to both the attorneys for both sides. What I recommend you do is allow each side 15 minutes to make their presentation. First, the applicant, I've talked to Mr. Leonard about that. They have an engineer here to make their presentation. You don't have to take the whole 15 minutes. And then Mr. West and Mr. Berry are here, and they're going to make a presentation on behalf of certain of the residents who are known to oppose this, and they have agreed that their speaking will keep their clients from speaking. And then it's my understanding that you may have one or two other people who want to have the 3 minutes that is normally allowed for this. So if that's all right with the planning commission, we'll invite Mr. Leonard or his clients to bring their engineer forth and discuss this project and the site plan.
Thank you, Sam.
Good evening. Y'all have heard from me before. I think you'd probably like to hear from our engineer. This is Jamie Sane. Mr. Sane is apparently well-versed in what we're doing and what we have in mind and what issues may or may not be prominent with this type of development. I know there's been a lot of talk about pollution, groundwater, smog, fog, everything known to man. The bottom line is as we've tried to indicate before, I don't think there's going to be any more traffic topping this mountain, semi-wise, than already is. They only have one avenue, and that's this highway that goes right over the top of this mountain. They're going to come over the top of the mountain. They may not stop on a particular day, but they will stop at some point. But it's going to be the same amount of traffic. So whatever comes up to the mountain is going to escape on the mountain, as it always has. The difference is these machines are better built now. Now, there's been also talk about prostitution, and there's been talk about pee in containers, yada, yada, yada. Look, we cannot alter all human behavior by building and constructing a business that we intend to operate. What we can do is do the best we can do to make sure that everything is done as best as possible for the interest of the town and for the public, as well as for the business. That's all we can do. Now, without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. Sane take over here.
My name is Jamie Sane. I'm representing Sadler and Associates. Mr. Sadler, he's out of town. He asked me to come by and represent them during the meeting. So we have submitted a site plan. Mr. Garrett has came up with a very in-depth review of our site plan, and at any point we can go right into his review. I'm not quite sure. I don't know your typical process. We can go through his review line item by line item, or I can just go through the site plan as a whole, and then we can get to his review, whichever way you would like to go.
Garrett, what do you prefer? Okay.
All right. So we've got a site plan in front of you for a 24,180 square foot proposed truck stop building. There was some the site plan in front of you meets all the minimum requirements for the local requirements and also TDOT and TDEC requirements with the state. In the beginning, there was some wetland issues that were found in the rear of the property. Those issues have been worked out with TDEC and have been addressed. The wetland issue, or the wetland area, is shown with a 30-foot buffer. There was some discussion of some sort of buffer between the residential property to the east and to the north of the site. We are proposing an 8-foot tall masonry wall with brick on the residential side of that wall. There are 3 existing driveways going onto the site. We are planning to modify those entrances, but we have worked with TDOT, and they have sent a letter of tentative approval pending the final permit be issued. There are a few things that still need to be submitted to TDOT for that final approval for the TDOT entrance permit. So there will be 2 drive-throughs as part of the building, as well as 1 sit-down dining space. As far as parking spaces go, we are well over the minimum requirement for parking. There is a landscape plan as part of the site plan. We're well over the minimum requirement for landscaping. I guess at this point, I'd like to answer any questions anyone may have.
I know there was a question about lighting. There was a request that the exterior lighting followed the IES model lighting ordinance. Is that still considered what the plan?
Yes, so is that in your zoning ordinance that?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
The city's planning on implementing it throughout the town.
Right. So without that currently being adopted, can that be required, is a question I have. But we do have a plan for an electrical engineer to do a site lighting plan. I'm sure that would be required from Petro to do that. But at this point, if that is a requirement, we would like for it to be a contingency as part of the approval of the site plan.
Okay, Sam, how do we handle that?
Well, you can approve the site plan and require some additional lighting. I mean, do you agree with that, Jared? Yeah. So, I mean, if that's part of what needs to be done, you can certainly make that a condition of the approval.
Okay, even though it's not required currently in our ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay. I know the second item was, our concern is for the neighbors. And so when discussion with RBT, there was back and forth, I'm sure Brian is on this as well, the lighting and then the wall. Is it going to be high enough? I mean, where are we at right now?
8 feet.
I think Garrett's gonna.
Sorry, not to speak on that, but I wanted to reiterate conditional approval of site plan section 1006. Says, it lists the different methods of taking action on a site plan. Item B says the planning commission has the authority to conditionally approve it. I'll read it. It says, if the site plan is found to substantially comply with all applicable requirements and only minor revisions are needed, the planning commission may grant approval subject to submission of a final revised site plan to the planning staff and or the enforcement officer. Staff shall inspect the revised site plan. If all the required revisions have been made, staff shall notify the planning commission chairman and secretary that the site plan is in compliance and is ready to be signed. Just want to clarify.
Okay. I think those, and the tying of the projects together along, so that we've got our Rocky Top and our RBT, will it be one cohesive plan?
The only, the developers may want to speak on this, but there is a 50-foot wide easement that will be along the existing building there for large truck traffic to exit out onto Forsyth Avenue. What is your plans as far as?
We're going to do it in 2 phases. So it'll be phase 1 and phase 2. So what you've got in front of you is phase 1. You've already conditionally approved phase 2. We did that last, whenever that was. But that'll happen after we get done with phase 1. So it will all be encompassed, and that's part of the TDOT review too, is making sure that we've got all that. We did agree to the Nighthawk initiative too, as far as the lighting. And the only issue that was outstanding that we talked about was whether or not we were going to build the 8-foot wall on top of a berm, which would effectively make it maybe a 12-foot wall. And just from an engineering standpoint, we haven't been able to get everybody to sign off and say that that will work.
So the issue with the large berm would be, of course, whenever you get a berm, you have to have slope coming off of that berm. And by the time you get the slope that you need, you'd be right in the middle of all that strip of parking along the rear. So that would, so basically 27 parking spaces would go away at that point.
Are we, my question would be on the wall is a nice barrier, but is there also, landscaping on both sides of the wall?
There's not, well, there will be landscaping. There is an evergreen buffer that will be on the exterior of that wall, as well as the normal landscaping that's throughout the site. So there's 2 layers of landscaping between the wall and Trussell Road at the rear.
Okay.
And
We don't have, I mean, we have this site plan, and I guess
It would be on sheet
It's hard
L1.
for me to- Yeah, L1.
It should be the very last page.
So it shows, and that's my question, is, so we have this is the wall here.
No, the wall is right here.
Okay.
So this is a row of evergreens that's to be planted.
Okay,
And then you have the normal landscaping that's throughout the site, and then you have the 8-foot wall that's on the interior of those.
And then, yeah, and there's 6 foot height minimum to begin with.
Which one are we looking at? Last page?
We're looking at the last page right now, so see it right there. Okay.
That buffer from, in the wetland area, is it just, I mean, it shows grass here, but it just kind of bleeds into this area?
Yes, so this wetland area will remain undisturbed, and then you have a 30-foot buffer that's along the edge of that wetland area.
Okay. Yeah, that's the fence from here.
Yes, so it's right along the edge, pretty close to the edge of the curve along the side.
And all existing, like right now, I know that there's some kind of old accesses on the side streets and things like that that have been put in there. Those will be abandoned, gone over, like, to disappear.
Yes, at the end of
There's like over
construction.
here, there's,
It'll have to look like this.
Yes, at the end of construction, the site will look exactly like it's shown on the plans.
Earl, do you have any input on this?
Well, I guess my biggest input would be, it's gonna be a very contentious project. If I were, the word go, it has been, and it'll be that way. If y'all decide to go ahead and approve it. I would just say, it'd be very important. Anything you guys want, it needs to be on that plan. There's no gray areas, but I don't want people coming up to me in the middle of the project and saying, well, this, I said it's gonna be this way, and you put me saying do it this way. So it's, unfortunately, it's y'all's call about, and thank goodness you're asking some real good questions. I mean, you really, but just remember that, as far as I'm concerned, you and I talked about this, just make sure that whatever we do, that what is on that site plan, the way it's gonna be.
Garrett, between the two properties, the phase 2 and phase 1, that property line as it is now, what's our requirements between commercial properties? As a, like, is it just landscaping that we have to have? Is there any type of screening that we're supposed to have between two different properties? Other than what's proposed here? I mean, do we have any, do they have to have any kind of fencing or just landscaping?
Look it up and make sure I'm telling you absolutely correct.
Okay.
So C3 to C3, it does require screening.
Screening. Landscape screening.
Correct.
Okay, which is kind of what we're seeing here.
Correct.
Okay.
So, it's my understanding that we have phase 1 and phase 2, but phase 1's gonna include this 50-foot wide easement. Is there a deed or something that needs to be done for that?
Yes, ma'am. So that would have to be deeded. That would not be done until the site plan is approved. But yes, it would have to be deeded at that point.
Brian, did you have a commentary on this?
No,
I'm assuming that if we do deed that, I mean, is that in know, we have these 3 exits that are being approved by TDEC. That exit as well is part of that? TDOT, thank you.
Yeah, that's what they actually wanted.
Okay, to have another,
Yeah, they were concerned that, I just know what I was told was that they didn't want another kind of situation like we already had with our neighbors, where there's only one way in and one way
Right.
out.
Okay.
Which causes some of the
congestion.
right there, so they were the ones that came up with kind of what we
That
had.
process.
Yes, so the 2 entrances straight in front of the proposed building would be your regular car traffic. Then the large trucks would come in the exit just to the north of those 2 entrances, and then they would exit out onto Forsyth Avenue.
And just for clarification, how many truck parking spots are there?
There are 117 tractor trailer parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody any more questions? This gentleman? Yeah.
Just for clarification of signage, are you gonna come back with a signage plan, or are you prepared?
Yes, so we plan to submit sign drawings at a later date.
Site plan, as long as
This
it's
is
bring
just
back.
site plan, we're not approving like, facade of the building or anything like that. I mean, do we have any say in that? What the exterior of the building is to look like or anything like that? We don't have that.
No design review.
No.
Not yet.
No one calls.
All right, we may have a rebuttal,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
You do, and you can, you've gone over the 15 minutes, but they've had questions to ask and all that, and if you guys are asked questions, the same courtesy be extended. So why don't you have a seat, and let Mr. West or Mr. Berry come up and.
Thank you, Sam. My name is Dudley West. Doug Berry and I represent Monteagle residents William and Janice Faring, William and Mary Beth Best, James R. Berry, Carl and Tammy Nunley, Catherine Peel, and Ron and Sandra Terrell. Our clients live very close to the truck stop. All of them live within approximately 200 feet of the truck stop line. They are strongly opposed to this truck stop. Now, I've got a couple of housekeeping matters. Prior to the continuance of the initial hearing scheduled for May 6th, we submitted a letter dated April 30th, 2021 to the city attorney, which was distributed to the Planning Commission together with exhibits the same day. The letter and exhibits discuss the reasons why our clients oppose approval. We request that this binder containing a copy of the letter and exhibits be made a part of the record of the Planning Commission in connection with its consideration of the applicant's site plan. Also, on July 2nd, 2021, after the proposed site plan was revised, we submitted a letter and supplement to a report prepared by Monteagle resident Jim Waller, which was Exhibit 3 to the binder. We also request that our July 2nd letter and Mr. Waller's enclosed supplement be made part of the record. Finally, Mr. Waller provided a report, which is Exhibit 3 in the binder, and he had a biography attached to that report. We have an addendum to his biography. It's a document titled Addendum to Bio of James E. Waller, P.E., dated July 6, 2021. I provided a copy of it to the city attorney prior to the meeting. We would ask that also be made part of the record.
All three of those have been provided to the town clerk.
Okay. There are many reasons why the site plan should not be approved, which are discussed in our letter and in Mr. Waller's supplement in detail. Pursuant to Section 1006, the Planning Commission is required to review the site plan for compliance with all requirements of the zoning ordinance. the applicant has the burden to show compliance. Pursuant to Section 540, the site plan must comply with all general requirements as well as specific additional requirements for truck stops. Respectfully, the site plan does not do that. The truck stop will create public health and safety issues which have not been adequately evaluated and addressed. The issues include increased traffic, environmental pollution, water drainage, noise, exhaust, and health risks for residents, lighting, and landscaping and screening. All of these issues are discussed in our letter. Due to our limited time tonight, however, I want to focus first on the most fundamental reason this site plan should not be approved. The most fundamental reason this site plan should not be approved is because the site plan creates an unacceptable risk. The truck stop will pollute Laurel Lake, the primary source of water for Monteagle. Monteagle resident James E. Waller, a West Point graduate and accomplished engineer, has carefully examined the original site plans as well as the revised site plan drawings recently submitted and concluded the drainage from the truck stop's fueling stations will drain into a tributary of Laurel Lake, Monteagle's primary water supply reservoir. Mr. Waller has concluded that approval of the site plan will create a significant risk that Monteagle's primary water supply will become polluted by runoff from the truck stop. As I mentioned, Mr. Waller has prepared a report, which is Exhibit 3 in our binder. After revisions were made to the site plan, he prepared his supplement. His report and supplement respectfully merit careful consideration and study by this Planning Commission. Section 1008Q of the zoning ordinance requires that site plans contain, quote, plans for collecting stormwater and methods of treatment. Mr. Waller's report and supplement demonstrate that the site plans do not contain adequate methods of treatment. Unless the applicant submits plans which contain adequate methods of treatment and which eliminate the risk of pollution of Monteagle's primary water source, this truck stop project should not be approved. It's important to note that Mr. Waller's conclusions are not based on speculation. Mr. Waller carefully evaluated the site plan and the revised site plan you're being asked to consider to approve tonight and reached his professional opinion based on the revised site plan you have before you. The bottom line is that the site plan does not comply with stormwater requirements. And in light of the risk of pollution of Monteagle's primary water source, it is not in the best interests of Monteagle residents for the Planning Commission to approve the site plan. There are other significant issues in addition to environmental risk. I would like to discuss two more. First, traffic, and secondly, the impact of this truck stop on our clients. First, traffic. The truck stop will be huge, over 13 acres. It will accommodate approximately 117 trucks and over 200 vehicles. It will be located next to an already existing truck stop, pilot truck stop, that accommodates 80 trucks. It will be located next to an exit 135, that TDOT has recognized as short. And it will be located where traffic problems already exist along Dixie-Lee Highway. It will be located across from a Chinese restaurant at which truck drivers eat and across from the ballpark. In our exhibits, we have included a thumb drive, which is Exhibit 5, and numerous photographs showing existing problems with traffic backup in the area. The potential for serious accidents is significant. As everyone knows, a chemical spill on April 23rd, 2021 from a truck in the same area required roads and schools to be closed and residents to shelter in place. If there had been an explosion, it's possible that our clients' homes would have been destroyed. Despite the glaring existing traffic problems, no traffic study has been presented to the city and properly evaluated. It's important to note that traffic will be impacted not only at exit 135 and near the pilot truck stop on Dixie-Lee Highway where problems already exist, but also at exit 134 and throughout Monteagle, particularly when traffic backups on exit 135 require trucks at exit 134 and drive-through trucks to exit at 134 and drive through Monteagle to reach the proposed truck stop from the west. The point is that a thorough traffic study should be conducted, presented to the city, and carefully evaluated before this site plan can be approved. Finally, I'd like to discuss issues with noise, exhaust, and impact of the truck stop on our clients. As I said, our clients live within 200 feet of this proposed truck stop and some within 50 feet of the truck stop line. Our clients have taken aerial photographs of other truck stops in Tennessee, and it appears that our clients' houses will be closer to this truck stop than houses at any other Petro truck stop in Tennessee. In other words, in other places in Tennessee where truck stops are located, trucks are not as close as they will be here to our clients. The impact is already being felt. Property values are already projected to decrease. Exhibits 35 and 36 in our binder show projected decreases in nearby home values by approximately 47%. Noise has already become an issue because the developer has cut all the trees. The noise issues will only become worse when trucks are parked nearby with engines idling. Because our clients' homes will be closer than any other homes to a truck stop, before this truck stop should be considered for approval, the Planning Commission should take all steps possible to ensure the issues with noise, exhaust, lighting, and screening are minimized. Exhibit 22 in our binder is a letter from Jan Faring, who lives within 50 feet of the truck stop lot line, requesting steps to minimize the intrusion into their lives. Her requests are not unreasonable. Her requests include, with regard to runoff, ensuring that there's no runoff from the truck stop into their yard as they've already experienced. Noise, to reduce noise, in addition to a wall and evergreen trees, consider a berm to raise the height of the wall. Now, they talked about a berm, but it should be noted that the proposed wall is 8 feet tall. The average truck height is 13 feet. To reduce noise, implement rules making parking spots directly across from homes not open to trucks with refrigerated units that must run all night long. Also, implement rules requiring trucks to back into parking spots so the engines and exhausts are not next to the property line. Now, with respect to lighting, that's been discussed. It is addressed in the zoning ordinance. Section 540E of the zoning ordinance states, with regard to truck stops, it's in the truck stop section, lighting at such facilities shall be arranged to minimize glare and reflection on adjacent residential properties and public streets. We'll read again. Lighting at such facilities shall be arranged to minimize glare and reflection on adjacent residential properties and public streets. My review of the site plan, and I believe Mr. Waller's review of the site plan, the drawings show no lighting or evidence of compliance with Section 540E. The site plan should be required to show the lighting, the nature of the lighting. How do you know it's going to minimize glare if it doesn't show what the lighting is going to be? Screening. The ordinance requires appropriate screening. Section 706. Screening is particularly important in this project. As previously mentioned, the fence proposed is only 8 feet tall, and the average truck height is 13 feet, 5 feet higher. Section 706 sets up forth minimum screening requirements. My understanding is that the applicant proposes only 6-foot holly trees placed 10 feet apart. This is not enough. Section 706 has a note which says, the matrix in this section applies generally to developments and land uses within Monteagle. Quote, additional screening may be required for certain land uses. And this is a land use that requires more screening, respectfully. 6-foot holly trees placed 10 feet apart is simply not enough. Each holly tree is required, it's required to have an expected spread of 8 feet. This growth will take a long time, if it ever happens. Therefore, additional screening should be required. In conclusion, in light of the unacceptable risk of water pollution, as well as issues described in our letter with traffic, water drainage, lighting, landscaping, screening, noise, exhaust, and tremendous impact on the lives of nearby property owners, we submit that the Planning Commission should not approve this proposed site plan. We also submit that before approval can be considered, at a minimum, the Planning Commission must be satisfied that, first, the risk of pollution of Monteagle's primary water source has been eliminated. Second, a thorough traffic study must be done and thoroughly evaluated. And third, all possible steps designed to mitigate the impact on nearby homeowners must be agreed to and implemented. I'll save any remaining time for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Garrett?
I think we need to hear from Garrett.
All right. Garrett, your turn.
So this site plan has been thoroughly reviewed. It was submitted, I can't remember exactly which date it was submitted on, but the full review was sent out on June 15th, 2021. That review covers everything that I consider in my review for site plan that goes through landscaping, parking, screening fences, security fences, not security fences, but it goes through everything that's required for a site plan. And after reviewing it and reviewing it again, the revised site plan that's been submitted and you have before you meets the requirements of the Monteagle zoning ordinance, and staff finds no reason to deny the site plan based on that.
Thank you, Garrett.
What about lighting?
So, in respect to lighting, he is correct. It does address that lighting should be oriented in a specific fashion. It doesn't require that it be shown on the site plan. That's why I did not require it to be shown on the site plan.
So our current ordinance does not show that we need to show that it has to be shown.
Correct. There's no specific language that should be addressed, but Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but that can be shown or inspected by Earl at the time of installation, correct?
So I have a separate lighting plan as an addendum.
Planning Commission will
Well,
require.
what'll happen is that when the lights are installed, the building inspector will determine whether or not they're compliant with the zoning ordinance.
Well, typically what I would do, I require a licensed engineer or architect to sign paperwork that they do comply.
Okay. And then you verify that yourself. So if that's not required to be shown in the plans by our ordinance, then that's one thing. Have we heard from TDEC or have we heard from TDOT?
Both state agencies are aware of this site plan, and to my knowledge, they have reviewed it, and they have both deferred to their legal counsel for comment.
Okay. And we've not, because lawyers are involved on both sides here.
Correct.
Scared them off.
So, yeah, and it's not our place to present their information or review.
All right. Madam Chairman, I think you have, Mr. Waller, do you want to speak? You've got 3 minutes to speak, sir. Because you're not represented by Mr. West or Mr. Barry.
I'm not. I'm a private citizen and an engineer. I hope you'll give me some lenience. I've had COVID-19, lung damage, and I may not be as quick as you would like to have me in 3 minutes. I'd like to have an exhibit put up here, Exhibit 2. It's in your supplement that I submitted to my April 26th report, which you can set that here. Well, Jane, if you need to move, see that.
Want to switch sides?
In my supplement, I describe the flow of rainwater off of the, within and off of the paved Petro site into the Monteagle storm sewer. I found that during a 10-year mean return interval rainstorm, over 1 3/4 million gallons of water, untreated storm runoff, will will flush the property of Laurel Lake into Monteagle's primary water supply. You can see the drawing here. It shows that the water flows northerly and westerly, and to a point in the property, just off of the property at the northwest corner, which is an inlet drain to an 18-inch diameter Monteagle storm sewer drain under Sampley Street. You can see it, I don't need to point it out. After that water gets to the north side of Sampley Street, it enters another section of pipe and goes under Main Street, or South Dixie Lee Avenue, to the parking lot, south parking lot of the post office, where there is also an inlet. Then it proceeds north on the northeast side of Maybe Street to a catch basin on the west side of the post office, which is taking other pipes into that intersection. Then it flows southwest through a 3-foot diameter storm drain pipe of the Monteagle drainage system. It's shown here on this plat, which you just saw, flowing under Maybe Street and the property of the Lakeside Collision business. Now, there are no provisions on the site plan for collection or treatment of any of this stormwater runoff. In spite of what Mr. Garrett Payne says, it's not there. I'm an engineer. I designed the Miami International Airport and other important drainage programs. I can read an engineering document and tell whether there is collection and treatment of stormwater drain runoff. There is not. The people of this city deserve this commission to consider the risks to the pollution and contamination of the Laurel Lake through which this runoff will go, down through the system of Monteagle, into an open drainage way, into a creek that flows directly into Laurel Lake. We want to buy water from Monteagle, from the Tennessee River, and have it pumped to some new lake that we're going to have to pay for to have designed? I don't think so. I think if you approve this site plan under any conditions, even if it's conditionally based on some other stuff coming in, it's a travesty and a risk to the health and well-being of the people of the city of Monteagle.
We don't have, from the city standpoint, Doreen, you're a representative, and I know that they had hired a fellow to handle this. What was the results? I know.
I think everything was good as far as all the numbers, the stormwater, everything was good on that. Am I right, Earl?
Well, how can that? I didn't hear everything. What's good?
Well, Gary, I have a question concerning all this water. In the plans that I see here on page C2, it talks about detention ponds. And so, am I seeing on this plan that, takes away the landscaping, but do I see three detention ponds on this property?
I'll defer to the engineer on that one. I'd rather have him explain exactly what's going on.
Okay. Or maybe four?
There's actually 3 detention ponds as part of this site plan. As far as the rate of runoff, off of the site. The post runoff or post-development runoff is a little over half of what the pre-development conditions are there currently. So there is less, according to the design, there is less runoff post-development than there is out there right now.
But are we prepared, that's projected, but here on the mountain, there are times that we get those huge gully washer storms, and then with this amount of traffic and trucks and, is it planned that it can handle?
Yes, ma'am. So the detention calculations are based on the 2 through 100 year storm. So the large events are taken into account as part of the calculations.
Okay, and so my understanding is that when we have a big old gully washer and there's a huge storm that comes through, from what I'm seeing, these downspouts and different things are draining to these detention ponds which then are filtering and slowing down the water that are being deposited into what Mr. Waller was speaking of, into this one drainage act.
Correct, yes. So there is, as he spoke about, there's basically two different areas that water leaves the site. Two of the detention areas their outlet structures go into the wetland area, and then they eventually leave the site on the northwest corner. And then also there's a small detention area where the runoff will go out onto Sampley Street, and I believe it feeds into the Dixie Lee Avenue area.
Okay. In these detention ponds, are there any measures that help filter this water so that it isn't causing as much environmental into this main water source that has been spoken of?
Right. So so in the detention areas, it will be grass. So of course, whenever water is detained, pollutants are going to fall out of that water, and then eventually it ties onto the wetland area where it will set, and setting there in the wetland area, pollutants will also fall out in that area as well. As far as pollutant requirements go, we're meeting with this site plan. We're meeting all of the requirements, all the local and state requirements regarding runoff and pollutants and things along those lines.
And even into the wetland area where.
Correct. So wetland areas, you're supposed to stay out of those completely. So we're showing a 30-foot buffer all along the edge of that wetland area. So that will be a treatment area as well.
Travis has approved.
Is the treatment the grass? Is that what I was heard you say? The grass is the treatment of the runoff.
No, I mean, the grass area the detention area is a grass area. It's a holding area for runoff. I didn't mean that it treats pollutants, but.
So we don't have a treatment?
No, ma'am. As part of the site plan, there is not a treatment shown on the site plan. But from my understanding, it's not required. But we are meeting all of the minimum requirements that TDEC has required.
Is the DEQ required to do anything on this project?
Sorry, sir.
Department of Environmental Quality, were they involved?
Yes, so that is TDEC.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So we did receive our notice of coverage for the land disturbance on site. So they have reviewed all of the detention, wetland areas, everything that is required by the state. They've reviewed all those before the notice of coverage was issued to the developer.
And we spoke of a berm and that the berm causes you to reduce spaces. But is there a reason that the wall cannot be taller than 8 feet?
Quite candidly, that was what the planning commission required of it, was 8 feet. And that was 2 foot taller we'd originally discussed. And yes, the trucks may be 13 foot tall. We're not necessarily trying to screen out trucks, we're trying to screen out sound. And the bottom line is, 8 foot is getting awfully tall and awfully expensive as it is already. We've agreed to do it, masonry, and face it with brick to make it attractive for the entire town. You know, if you get much taller, you're asking for trouble in and of itself. All it's gonna take is somebody hitting one section of wall, and it's gonna fall on someone, and we got another problem. The bottom line is, we agreed to 8 foot because you asked us to agree to 8 foot, and we're ready to do it.
Go ahead.
We just approved the site plan 15 minutes ago, didn't even have to have a wall. Real close to the Dunn's house. We about 15 minutes ago, when that lady come in on pilot, we voted to approve something that didn't even have to have a wall. So here we are, our hands are tied, guys. Party's over.
Do y'all have any more questions for this gentleman? Anybody else on the commission?
Well, I guess my only question is there something that can be done in detention ponds? I mean, they're speaking of it, and I'm not saying, I'm just asking, because you're an engineer. The community has spoken of treatment with the detention pond. Are there things that can be done to treat water through a detention pond?
Yes, there can be. It's very expensive, but I'm not aware of any requirements. I mean, TDEC has reviewed all the documents, and they're not requiring it. There's nothing in your zoning ordinance that would require it, so I don't see that it could be a contingency as part of the approval of the site plan. We're meeting all the local requirements as written. We're meeting all of the requirements that TDEC has required. I do not see that any additional requirements could be put on that aspect of the site plan.
Can you speak on the permits that you do have from TDEC?
Yes, so we submitted the notice of intent and construction plans as part of our request to get a notice of coverage for the grading on the site. There will have to be an open permit through TDEC throughout the construction process that makes sure that no sediment leaves the site during construction. With the wetland area in the back, the requirements through TDEC were pretty extensive as far as trying to keep all of the sediment out of the wetland area and keep the wetland as undisturbed as possible. And then also we have spoke with TDOT as far as the entrances go, and we have received a tentative approval through TDOT.
For the permits through TDEC, are they only through the construction, or are they in perpetuity?
At this point, we would I believe that the permits that are in perpetuity would be completed towards the end of the construction process.
Which permits?
As far as through the EPA permits, is that what you're speaking about?
The permits you said that would be in perpetuity, which ones would those be?
The wetland areas, I mean, TDEC, they do extensive inspections along the way. So with the wetland area being shown on the site plan, they're going to be double checking that at the end of construction for sure.
Any other questions for this gentleman?
The 30-foot buffer on Sampley Street. So it showing a road tile, is that a road tile there?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
So is that for access?
That would be abandoned as part of the construction.
So can we not bring, because it's the 30 minutes up, you're saying that nothing can be in that space, we can't bring it, kind of the same deal that we were talking about earlier, we can't bring anything into that, as you did on the other side, you have landscaping all the way through, so you bring the landscaping all the way through that 30-foot buffer, and this wall.
So I believe the buffer is shown that way due to in the zoning requirements it requires the landscape buffer to be along residentially zoned properties. So once you get past Overton Avenue, that property is zoned commercial.
This way here, yeah, but this way here, continues all the way through. There's
No reason for it
no reason
to
for
be
there to be
curb cut.
same back there. Okay, that's all question I think. Thank you.
Mr. West, I calculate that between Mr. Leonard's side and the questions and everything, you have about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Thank you very much. I just want to address quickly just 2 or 3 things. Number one, this question about whether or not methods of treatment are required, it cannot really be in dispute. The zoning ordinance itself, and specifically the truck stops, oh goodness, I just missed my tab there. Section, I believe I know it by heart though, it's section 1008 E state site plans shall, it's mandatory, contain the following components and information as applicable. It's not E, it's Q. Plans for collecting stormwater and methods of treatment. It's not treatment. Just these little detention ponds are not treatment. We're talking about oil. We're talking about water being flushed off of asphalt into your drinking water. This is something that slows down the flow of the water. It's not the same thing as something that treats it. Mr. Waller's supplement states, Sadler and Associates drawings include no provisions such as trench drains around fueling islands to capture spill fuel, oil, and send it to an oil and water separator. And leaking fuel tanks and spills at gas stations are known to contaminate drinking water sources for nearby communities. He goes forward and he says, unequivocally, my review of the Sadler and Associates site plans indicates the submitted site plans are not, he's the engineer, they're not in compliance with the Town of Monteagle Ordinance, section 108Q, which states site plans shall contain the following components and information as applicable, plans for collecting stormwater and methods of treatments. Therefore, the site plan should not be approved by the Monteagle Planning Commission. Detention plans are not treatment. Detention ponds are not treatment. I think there's also, with regard to TDEC has been involved with regard to construction. They were cited by TDEC because they went in and they did grading that caused flooding of our client's yard. They may be in compliance with TDEC right now on that. That is history. What we're talking about is Monteagle residents' future drinking water. And I don't believe that TDEC, we don't have a representative of TDEC here. Mr. Haynes, if you look at your review, he recommended that there be representatives of TDEC here. He recommended there be representatives of TDOT here. Where are they? They're not here. You're having to take their word. Don't take their word for it. This is too important. With regard to lighting, this question about whether or not it's not required. There are requirements in the zoning ordinance for truck stop lighting. The plans don't show whether they're going to have a light bulb or a spotlight or any kind of light. We don't have any information about what kind of lighting you have. How do you know it's going to minimize glare if there's nothing in the plan that shows it? Your common sense tells you that it just doesn't make any sense. Respectfully, for all the reasons that we have discussed, we submit, again, that this site plan should not be approved.
Madam Chairman, it's up to the planning commission.
Rodney,
Can I say one thing?
come on up to the,
Okay.
I want to talk to you about the lighting plan. We're going to have a lighting plan, but it ain't an ordinance to have one. I don't want the lights shining all over the neighbors on it in the parking lot. First thing, you don't know nothing about. We didn't get cited from the TDET or TDOT, either one. I don't know where you heard that or where you got it. That's not true. Next thing, you don't know nothing about. I do cleanups. I was the one that done the cleanup on the tanker that had a spill over here. If that tanker had been sitting on a truck stop parking lot, if anything happened, it would went in that detention pond. Trucks is already here. We got detention ponds out here to collect overspills or anything ever happened. I don't know what you know about detention ponds. It really ain't for all the water runoff. It's to catch if something really happens. And there's going to be 3 on this property. You're wrong on a lot of things you're saying here, but I just want to tell you about the lighting, okay?
If I have any time left, I would like to have Mr. Waller address that. He's the engineer. He is the expert on drainage and pollution. Go ahead.
He's got a minute.
The retention ponds that you're looking at are not retention ponds. They're detaining ponds, maybe. But if you look at the invert elevations of the pipes flowing out of those so-called retention ponds, they're at the bottom of the pond. What does that mean? When the water comes in, the water goes out. 2 exceptions. The ponds over near the wetland retain some water, but such a small amount of water that any oily water flowing into those ponds will go directly into the wetland and then directly through the culvert into the trench leading to the entry point, which is unrestrained flow into Laurel Lake. Thank you.
That water, if I may, that water runs underneath the road and through one of the neighbor's yard and has been doing so for years. There's a bridge.
It will be closed because it runs through my yard and
No,
that
no,
will be
no.
all right, one last, Brian.
We did this on March 15th for 2 hours. We had 32 people on the screen. We had Travis that you guys hired as a city engineer to study the water. He did a report that I haven't even seen, but it's, he gave us his preliminary, whatever you want to call it, analysis of the data, and the data was conclusive that what's being brought up tonight was not an issue. So we've done all this. It's been months. I'll go back to March 15th. We had 2 hours to answer any and all of these questions. We had city officials. We had Travis from JLA Engineering. We had a phase 1 study from Jeb Barrett, and all of those issues were put to bed.
And that's all part of the record here, but this is a different deal. This has to do with the site plan as opposed to the issue of the rezoning.
Right. I just heard someone say that we have to take their word for it. You don't, because you have Travis Wilson, who the city hired, on their own dime to look at this exact issue that we're talking about, with pollution in the water supply.
All right, so we're at the point of voting.
there's a motion.
All right, I need a motion.
Well, I guess I have a few concerns about the tentative approvals by TDEC and TDEC, those things that are supposedly approved, but we don't have, it says we don't have those letters yet. Is that right? We don't have those full letters?
So in your agenda packet, there's two different
Right.
letters from TDOT that are tentative approval letters.
Okay.
That were submitted for the entrance.
Okay.
But as of today, there's no review or approval from TDOT.
Right. 'Cause he said
Outside
that-
of the permits that they already have.
But they already have. But it says tentative approval, and you said in your review that, they issued a letter of tentative approval, but, the impact study hasn't been released. We haven't seen that. And that's the traffic study, basically, that TDOT did.
Right, it's my understanding that that's what changed the routing of the one-way truck entrance and one-way exit. It's my understanding that study is what resulted in that change.
And is there a reason why they won't release that?
That's a question for developers.
Brian? Can we get
Well,
that?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for the email I have to Alan Wolf where he gave us tentative approval.
Yeah, I know, it says that you have the tentative approval, I'm just curious, will TDOT release the document?
Part of that's contingent on y'all approving the site plan too, because they're, like, the entrances and the exits that we talked about earlier, they're the ones that came back and their revisions were sort of like recommendations that they made that we follow to get their approval. So what you have in front of you is based on their recommendations for approval.
Commissioners, any other discussion before we do one or the other?
And do we have the impact study? It was submitted?
Do we?
Keep mine, submitted that to TDOT. Zach reviewed it, now and Wolf, this is false, and he's the one that came back with the recommendation.
It was on the snow day.
With all due respect, is that correct? I mean, in your review of this, you indicated that it hasn't been released.
Correct, I haven't received it in final.
He hasn't
No, I
received
haven't
it.
received
They haven't given the final approval.
But you've received the tentative letter.
Correct. I think it was addressed to Mayor Rupp.
From our understanding of TDOT, they will not issue a final TDOT entrance permit until the site plan has been approved by the city. The site plan that has been submitted has followed all of their recommendations, but they will not give us the final paperwork until a site plan has been approved.
That's an entrance, that's not traffic.
There is no, we did do the traffic study, we had Steve Meyer here on March 15th.
Snow day.
For 45 minutes.
February 19th.
And the only issue that TDOT raised was, their words, not mine, was we wish we wouldn't have allowed our neighbor's entrance to be the way it is, where it's the entrance and the exit are together, because that's truly what causes the congestion, because you've got trucks coming out, so as trucks are coming in, they will stop and let the trucks come out, because it's all in one entrance, it's in one spot. So that's why they came back and said, because originally on our first, the one we submitted last July, we had the same plan basically that what our neighbors do. One entrance, one exit right there together. They don't like that.
Sam, any comments?
Nope, I think y'all, if there's a motion,
Not yet.
And then, is there a way, are we able to request more, I mean, I know that, I agree that they've gone above our standards for, screening by putting in a masonry wall, and they've added a screen here. Can we make that, those bushes taller?
So what we have on our landscape plan is really based on the way the ordinance is written. It's not the way we originally wanted to do it. My goal was to kind of make it sort of like Augusta does with the Masters. If you drive down Washington Avenue, you can now tell that there's a golf course on the other side of those trees. And, right, but the ordinance that we already had is what kind of led us down the direction to what we have in front of us.
Well, but you can suggest some denser vegetation.
Yeah, denser vegetation and maybe, my request would be not just holly bushes, but maybe some thicker screening all along that residential side. It's not just holly bushes that are.
What was in the previous plan that this gentleman made reference to?
All evidence is all over.
Like trees.
Does that satisfy you?
I guess to answer your question, going back, I think you asked about increasing the height of the fence. The ordinance reads the height is to be between 6 and 10 feet, and they're cutting it in the middle at 8.
Okay. And, right, and I'm talking about screening, like the landscaping screening at the back.
Right.
I know that they put in holly bushes all the way around, but can we do something that's holly bushes, but more, as you're talking about, you know, something that's a little bit of a combination that's, maybe we have greenery trees and some holly bushes just to really make that a dense populated, dense area.
Bamboo grows fast.
No, it's invasive and no.
But it grows really fast.
It does. My other question is that there is no, I see no signage proposal. I see that there will be a sign, but I'm curious what that is to be, and then I also would love to, I mean, I know that we don't at this time require a lighting plan, and I know that you have a plan that's going in place.
Jonathan Frank is the contractor that built the last 4 or 5 major travel centers in the
Right.
southeast.
So if there was something that we could,
I can get you one.
that we could have,
Yep.
I think that would be important for us for.
And we did agree to the, I think it's called the Nighthawk Initiative.
I know it's a lot to chew on, commissioners, but we do need a motion one way or the other.
Mr. Geary recommended that the commissioners put everything that we wanted in writing. And without the lighting plan, if we want the lighting plan, without the increased landscape, it's not in writing. So I can't make a motion.
You have a motion to defer it until those items are received.
I'll make that motion to defer until the items that have been mentioned here, include this item.
And those items, so we need to make that a little.
Those items would be the lighting,
Lighting plan.
And a proposal for the increased, well, the
Increased
lighting.
landscaping, lighting, and signage.
Method of treatment.
Excuse me,
The method of treatment.
What about the water?
For the method of treatment.
We're just not gonna talk about the water?
The method of treatment for the detention ponds.
So one question I have about the method of treatment. So we're meeting all of the TDEX requirements, the state's requirements as far as runoff goes. What are the requirements? Is a question I have. If we're having to submit plans, what requirements are we meeting with those?
Well, I know that there are drains and things such that have filter systems in them, that as the water goes through, it's actually helping filter some of these items out of oil runoff and things that are coming from the gas lane. There are detention ponds that you see in very large establishments that have, they're their base is concrete, they're different, there are drains that are available to be able to make that drain at different levels and to filter water as it comes off. I know that the way those detention ponds are constructed, that there's, whether they have gravel or different levels of the way those detention ponds are built, that as that water moves down, it's filtering a lot of that stuff out of it. So there are other ways that detention pond can be released into our water system, and there are levels of expense. I know that there are some that are very expensive, yes, but there are other ways other than just putting in a dirt ditch with grass that can filter the water as it contains.
So the site plan that's submitted is meeting all of your requirements currently, the city's requirements and the state's requirements.
No.
So what the developer is asking for is a site plan approval contingent upon a lighting plan be submitted from a licensed electrical engineer that would meet all of the Nighthawk initiative requirements, and then also the sign information will be submitted at a later date as well. So we would like for the site plan to be approved as submitted with a contingency that a lighting plan as well as sign information be submitted at a later date.
We also respect it is not unreasonable to put in writing the methods of treatment that are required by your zoning ordinance. He keeps saying that it complies with TDEC. He has nothing in writing to show you that.
They would have not have issued the permit.
At the end of the day, though, your ordinance, the law that you are supposed to enforce, requires that the methods of treatment be contained. So it's not unreasonable to have information as required by the zoning ordinance regarding methods of treatment here.
What methods are the neighbors using? I don't even know.
Don't try to shred, Brian, come on.
I believe the ordinance does not state type, it just states
A description of the methods of treatment.
a description.
Information regarding.
So our methods of treatment would be detention. That would be our method of treatment. That would be our method of treatment.
And that's up to y'all where you determine that's sufficient.
It is not detained water, it is water flowing straight through two of the so-called retention ponds, which are not retention ponds. At the invert of the pipe, bottom of the pipe, is at the same elevation of the bottom of the pond, water flowing out immediately. It's not detained. It is not retained.
It's detained in the sense that the pipe is smaller than the water coming in.
You're right. It's at the top. It don't go out the bottom. So that's where you don't want, you need to go over and look at it when you come in here.
I'm looking at your drawing.
Well, I'm just telling you, it comes out the top. If you got a spill,
Still not being treated. How about that?
We don't have to treat everybody's water in Marion County.
Some can have Travis's.
All right, hold on. All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Well, we're in the process of making it. My question to you would be, because it does state that we need to have a required statement of
Treatment.
Or if planning and zoning requests or does not approve, and it's something that's not stated that, they have to, drain it this way. Can we do that?
Well, method of treatment is what it is asked for. And there's an argument that putting it through the detention pond system and through the wetland is a method of treatment. I know that y'all disagree with that, and that's up for y'all to make that determination whether you're satisfied by that or not. I mean, I can't tell you whether it's appropriate or not. It's just for you, having heard this evidence here, whether that's sufficient for you to determine whether that there is a appropriate method of treatment given all the facts and circumstances.
But there was a report done that the city paid for. There was an independent report from Travis Wilson.
Yeah, that was a report relative to the sewer system, and as far as he's concerned, there's no additional tax, no additional aspect of the sewage system affected by the project, and I think we all agree with that.
And he said that the stormwater runoff report was not included, that he would give that to us at a later date.
Did he say that?
Yes, he did.
Oh, man. And again, we don't need everybody all over the room talking, okay? The question is, I don't know the answer to that.
If we look back at the minutes, you'd see it last night.
Well, okay.
Do we have a motion on the table?
We do have a motion that needs to be clarified.
I think that we need to, I motion not, it's not contingent, so not approving at this time until we have a pylon sign,
Well, then it's not approved, you should move to defer.
to defer, yeah.
Final approval or disapproval.
Defer for final approval, until we have a, updated landscaping screen and then a method,
Well, and let's make sure we understand what you're asking for. Are you asking for an enhanced landscape screen along the lines of what was presented
yes,
previously? I mean, I want to just make sure that it's all spelled out so both sides
yeah.
know what we're doing.
With all due respect, though, like, we've done this so many times.
It's too important.
Every single time we come here, we get delayed for some other
Y'all
reason.
just passed one with no wall, no nothing a while ago. 15, 20 minutes ago, y'all passed a building that's gonna be less than 200 feet from a house, Nunnally's house down there. Y'all just passed it one time here,
We
guys,
had a
one time.
contingent approval over a year ago. All they wanted
This is
us
getting
to do
serious
was
now,
build a wall.
one time y'all passed that, she come in here one time, we've been a year trying to do this.
The problem that I also see is that you're requiring that they provide you information concerning signage and the lighting that is not required under your ordinance.
Never been discussed.
For
It
being
does-
passed to that.
We do, it
And
does
we have a
require
light,
that we have
we have a $2.5 million lighting, not lighting proposal, but it's part of the fuel and tanks and pumps and all that. They're also doing the parking lot lots, but we've had a detailed quote on that for 9 months. Y'all could have had that 9 months ago.
Well, if it takes any pressure off anybody, as far as the signage goes, I'm the guy that does that. Typically, the planning commission doesn't.
I haven't even negotiated those contracts.
Those are guidelines that are
They're not gonna have a
established
pole
in the
sign.
zoning ordinance that typically I make sure that they're.
I don't think your lighting is an issue.
is an issue.
It should be an
Signage
issue.
is an issue. I mean, I would like the landscaping, but I do,
What you're asking for.
my,
is
well,
what
and
the original
that's,
had.
and my concern, I guess my biggest concern is exactly what we've just been talking about is, I understand detention ponds. I know how they work. I've worked with commercial properties before. Not truck stops, I won't put it that far, but I have worked with many commercial properties before. I do understand that detention ponds do filter some pollutants out of the water. However, I am concerned because, yes, we already mentioned that Pilot over here only has a small detention pond and they're running off all these trucks and the water's coming off and that's and creating into our system. So here you do have more than they do, and I give you credit for that. So yes, you do have more.
We got them all the way around the property, all the way down the side.
And I can see them here in the plans. I feel like you have begun to address that, and we're just asking because, I feel like we need that, yes, if it was just the fact of the landscape screen and the sign and the lights, I'd be like, hey, let's approve this, and you bring me that stuff and I'll sign it and we'll be done with it. What I'm more concerned about is, you did say Travis did a sewage, review, and he is concluding on the impact of this runoff system. I just wanna make sure that what it happened over here isn't happening here. And I'm not saying that we definitely need to go expensive drainage system. I just wanna make sure we're covering our bases and not adding to the problem.
Well, again, understand this, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Travis's job is to evaluate the town's sewer system.
Sewer system.
And to the degree that there is stormwater that is resolved by that, he's there. But our sewer system, Earl, correct me if I'm wrong, is on the other side of town from this, isn't it? So the sewer system is really not impacted by this project. So if you're deferring it just based on waiting to get Travis's report, you're not gonna be getting much because, yeah, it's just not in the right place. What his concern is what they call I&I, which is inflow and infiltration, yeah. I knew there was another I somewhere.
And I don't mind the question, but we had experts here on March 15th. We publicized the meeting.
Right.
Well in advance. Any and all these questions, I mean, we've heard everything from people talking about urinating in the milk jugs. And we've heard it all. And every time, we set up some special meeting, I bring in 32 people that are gonna be working on this project on a Monday night to take away from their families to answer these questions. And now here we are 4 months later, we're asking the same questions, and because they're not here, there's this whole big overhang, a cloud of uncertainty.
You
It's
keep
not
moving the goalpost.
Yeah, he's
Keep
right.
moving the goalpost.
Russell,
And this is wrong.
he's right. The other guy's over the sewage. TDAC is over the runoff water. And they're over that. They got their eyes on it worse than these people here. I mean, I promise you. The wetlands, they said was wetlands, they ain't in wetlands no more. It's dry as a bone. I told them it wasn't wetlands to start with. It's dry today. I mean, wetlands stays wet year round because I own some. We chasing a rabbit again.
Bill Phillips
So-
actually did our original environmental study, which is how we got to be the wetlands to begin with. He had Mike Lee, who's from Nashville, who heads up, I think he's Jennifer's boss in Nashville, really high up. He came down, he's the one that marked the wetlands, what they are.
Or what they are.
So everything that's on that site map has been reviewed by, significant people, not just, somebody that Rodney and I hired from,
So, back to the treatment question. So per TDEC's requirements, settling through the stabilized detention area is a form of treatment for the stormwater. So if you're asking for additional treatment, I'm just wondering what are the requirements for the additional treatment if TDEC is fine with settling in the detention area counting as the as treatment.
TDEC said that. I mean, where is the documentation TDEC that signed off on your method of treatment of pollutants?
They would have not.
From this truck stop pursuant to the drainage plan.
So the TDEC's notice of coverage is their statement saying that all plans have been reviewed and are approved through TDEC.
Where's the right?
The notice of coverage document
The
is
notice
the
of
right.
coverage, see, that's where you don't know what you're talking about, because when I started, let me talk, but because when I started dozing up there, that you said they shut me down, it was because the ponds weren't built. Because the ponds weren't built. We went up there and built the ponds, and they said everything was okay. You know what I'm saying, the ponds we dug there? That when we first, that's what they want to start with, to stop the water from running anywhere, and that's what we done.
I'll say something about TDEC. I don't think people understand that TDEC governs what happens from the standpoint of pollution during the construction phase. After the construction is completed, TDEC does not have jurisdiction.
All right, we're gonna stop, and we're gonna vote. So,
Is there a motion?
we need a motion.
Let's just say, approval contingent on a, I wish I had your,
landscaping ordinance states that the screen shall consist of 10-foot wide yard around the building or along abutting side and rear property lines in accordance with the matrix above, which we already specified it is required. And either A or B as follows. It looks like A is what they've shown, where it's detailed as one row of screening trees planted on center and spaced 10 feet apart. The next option may or may not be denser, but it's stated as two staggered rows of screening shrubs with 7 feet of separation between the rows and shrubs planted 8 feet apart. Those are the two different options that are given.
Yes. Can we make that, like, the B's wording, but then require it to be evergreen and,
If you want to spell that out in your motion, then.
So, it goes on to say at the bottom of that page, the note says, the matrix in this section applies generally to developments and land uses within Monteagle. Additional screening may be required for certain land uses. This matrix shall not be interpreted as preemptive screening required by any other section of the zoning ordinance. So I believe that gives them the authority to require it as dense as possible.
How did you define the previous screening that you said that you backed off?
Kenny would know more about that than I think, because he's the one who came up with all that. I thought he was negotiating with you on some of that stuff too, to get to where he got to. But originally, I wanted to submit nothing but evergreens around the outside.
Well, all right, so that's acceptable. Would that be acceptable to you, Mary Jane? The evergreens?
yes, nothing but evergreens, but I would like them to be not, we've got 10 feet. Can we not,
Yeah, we can make it closer with it.
yeah, closer together,
What do you want, 8 feet?
8 feet.
8 feet? Okay.
8 feet apart?
And how high do you want the evergreens to be? What do we say about that in one of our matrices?
So American hollies are shown under section 708, plant classification, subsection C, screening trees. Screening trees are evergreen species intended to create a year-round visual barrier between two properties. The following recommended species shall be installed at a height of 6 to 8 feet and shall have a minimum expected mature spread of 8 feet.
So there you go.
Okay, yes, they,
So would you read that off again?
Which part?
About the evergreens and the.
Sure. So again, section 708, subsection C, screening trees. Screening trees are evergreen species intended to create a year-round visual barrier between two properties. The following recommended species shall be installed at a height of 6 to 8 feet and shall have a minimum expected mature spread of 8 feet. American holly is the first one mentioned under that section.
but I wanna make our height a minimum of 8 to 10 feet.
8 to 10?
8 to 10 feet, and then 8 feet apart.
Yes.
Okay, so increased screening, approved with increased screening of evergreens. 8 to 10 feet in height, and 8 feet apart, at least 8 feet apart.
At least 8 feet apart.
Or at max 8 feet apart.
Max,
Yeah.
yeah, max 8 feet apart.
Okay, all right, so that's one condition. Do you have any other conditions to your motion to approve?
And you've got the lighting and the sign, right?
Well, I've got the sign, sure, but if you want to, make sure that particular site lighting.
That was done originally when we went back and agreed to do the Nighthawk initiative.
Is that what we're gonna call it, is the
I
Nighthawk
thought that's what
initiative?
it was being called by Nate.
So lighting to be approved by the,
It's the IDA/IES model lighting
It
ordinance.
increased the quote by about 180,000, I do know that much. But yeah, we agreed to that.
lighting to be approved by the building inspector, but in accordance with,
The IDA/IES model lighting ordinance.
okay.
All right, and we've got two
You
conditions.
got two conditions.
Sam, I'd rather you say that would be, instead of approved by me, that would be included in the specifications for the lighting construction.
Okay, let's see.
That would be more,
Lighting, what did you say, Earl?
would be included in the specifications of lighting to meet that particular.
Well, let's just say just lighting in accordance with the IDA, IDS model.
Yes.
Model. Does it say model ordinance?
It says model lighting ordinance.
Okay. Okay. Mary Jane, that's two,
That's two, he talked about, here, see how I got 2 rows here? I don't want it that deep, but can we, because he talked about having 2 rows of evergreens, or 2 rows in section B, staggered.
Yeah.
Can I make them staggered?
Yes.
Staggered?
Yeah. It gives them more room to grow.
8 feet apart, but staggered. Staggered into 2 rows.
And then you want that buffer having,
Yeah, and then this buffer be the
30-foot buffer having.
Yeah, the 30-foot buffer to have the,
On sampling,
yeah, to be closed.
to be closed.
What do you mean by that?
There's an access, because I want the landscaping to
Okay.
not, there could be no,
The continuous right here.
All right, so
just having this continue.
oh, yeah. Okay, so let me see, so.
Okay. The 30-foot buffer on Sampley Street.
So the buffer just continues?
Yes.
Okay, continue across.
Yeah, just like it did back here, see that one across?
Yeah, it's
That
the
30
open
foot
to
easement.
access.
Sample.
Open, it's open to access.
Continue across on Sampley, right?
Yes.
I've seen it. It's the open to. It's an access.
Sampley, across from Overton, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the last part I want is a I know the detention pond and how it works, but I have seen on plans before that shows how that detention pond will retain the water and then more clearly than it states on here, how it's gonna be drained out, the levels of it and how it will drain out. If there's,
So what are you asking?
For a written explained, and diagram of, explanation and diagram of
Did you have to get a stormwater permit?
Through,
Did you have to get a stormwater permit from the EPA?
through TDEC? Yes. I mean, they reviewed all of our grading plans.
Just their specification.
Correct, yes.
Okay, well, I guess we would want to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, for that.
Madam Chairman,
That's
I understand that the public portion of the meeting has been closed and the board is commissioners deliberating. So, is that you're gonna allow additional public comment from the developers and their representatives and just be right back in this? I would try, being a city attorney by trade, I would laud you for taking this and start your deliberations and your vote as you've done, but it should not be continuing dialogue, otherwise you should go.
Our track.
Methods of treatment is what you're talking about.
I think y'all need to walk away from that microphone.
Mary Jane, are you speaking about, say, section, page C4, or the page of describing that, level of detail?
Yeah, but that is the construction. Something like this, explaining the method.
They're going to get us, what is it we're looking for exactly?
It's right, this is.
Storm drain, inlet connection, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it not on here? I mean,
That just shows where it's going in. This is not the, this is what is in actual.
Mary Jane, what are you looking for?
So, this shows, like in
that's the drain that's gonna feed into the storm drain system.
This is the outlet right from the pond, coming out.
Storm drain inlet protection, is that what you're looking at? So what is it that you need put in the motion?
But I'm trying to determine.
So would the stormwater permit have that from TDEC?
I don't have,
I did see that question.
This is not, this isn't the storm drain inlet. This is where the water's going in the same storm drain from the road. It's not from the detention. Once it goes into detention, but this is what's going into the detention pond. Then into the detention pond. But we don't necessarily have to have that detention pond. Right? And the storm drain goes straight to the
All right,
well, so, the storm drains.
This is around all down the house.
The detention, the detention, that's what I'm seeing. And that's what those are going into here, see here, and then they come in here, and then they want to plow here, and same here. And then into the detention. Yeah. And that's been approved by, yeah. Yeah. And that's been approved by. And we have that, yes.
so you're satisfied, you've got 3 conditions right now.
Yeah, my 3 conditions are landscaping.
could you read those back?
I'm writing them down now, so I can hand it to Debbie once we're certain that that's it. I'm going to, I'm just writing it out here just a minute.
No.
Okay. All right. Your motion is to approve, premised on 3 conditions. Increase screening of evergreens 8 to 10 feet in height, 8 feet apart but staggered into 2 rows. Is that right? Okay. Lighting shall be in accordance with the IDA/IDS model lighting ordinance.
Yes.
The 30-foot buffer to continue across Sampley in the area across from Overton. Okay. Is that your motion? So you can formally make it?
And Garrett, let me verify one more time, the TDEC, the T-dot letter, we've had the tentative approval that we're waiting, once we approve it, and they're okay with the emphasis.
You should have both.
As long as we approve this 50-foot in the back-to-back, and the 50-foot easement,
That's my understanding.
okay? And that would be the site plan is that says with this exit into this other property. Is there anything that we have in our ordinances that would exist that stop us from making an access to another property if it's not a road?
It's a chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
then as far as T-Deck is the environmental side, correct? Did I get that right? They have received a approval to proceed at this point
That's my understanding for construction.
for construction, but you haven't received it.
It's publicly available on the website.
Okay. All right. Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so, again, your motion is to approve with condition one, increased screening of evergreens 8 to 10 feet in height, 8 feet apart but staggered into 2 rows. Condition two, lighting in accordance with the IDS model lighting ordinance. And 3, 30-foot buffer to continue across sampling across from Overton.
Yes.
And no water treatment, right?
The 3 conditions are stated, sir.
All right, great. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. I need a second. All right, roll call vote. Richard Black.
Yes.
Janet Miller Schmidt.
Yes.
Mary Jane Flowers. Joanne Parmley.
Yes.
Peter Beasley.
Yes.
Ivor Russell. Yes. Ayes have it. It has been approved. All right, we're going to move on to any other properly presented new business. Earl, Garrett, anybody? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
And a second, all those in favor? All right, thank you, commissioners, for your time. Thank you, everyone. It is 8:28.
I could not give you a recommendation. I'm not, I'm just going to take your recommendation. Capable for me. She would not be eligible.
I don't need to take that. No, that's okay.
Good talking to you. Just proud to be here.
You're